So my dad's listening to you right now. He said
Okay,
to me, he
talofa
heard that you
falfata
were
valosi
promoting this
vo.
Tavia. And so he came upstairs to say he'll be listening to this radio interview. So I was born and raised in Waitara in Taranaki, but my dad was born and raised in Samoa, the village of Vailele.
Yeah.
And my dad is Fatali'i Kamisi Sepuloni. But my dad's dad was actually Tongan. He married my grandmother Maasai. They raised their children in Vailele. But my dad and his brothers and sisters are half Tongan. And
Mm.
so on the Tongan side, we come from a very remote island called Niua Toputapu, which
Mm.
is closer to Samoa than it actually is, I think, to Tongatapu. And if you see it on a map, it's very much in the middle of Samoa, Tongatapu, Niue, Uvea, and Fiji.
Mm.
It's a beautiful island. We've never been there because I mean it is so far away, it's very difficult to get to. But one day, hopefully, we will get to go there.
Mm. So you were born in Taranaki, and your education as well started from there.
Yes. So Waitara Central, Manukurihi Intermediate, New Plymouth Girls High School. And then I only left Taranaki when I finished my seventh form year and I came up to Auckland to study at the University of Auckland and at the Teachers College at the Epsom campus.
So your life was around teaching. Your second home was the school, the schoolroom.
Yes, and I mean, Sav, yeah, I mean, I think I was working at the uni when you were there, or perhaps we might have been studying at the
Yes.
same time. But much of my working life before I got into politics was at the University of Auckland. And so I've actually spent a big part of my life either studying or working at the University of Auckland, or, over the course of a few years doing both.
How are your parents? Talofa pali pe fo fa fungabai.
How are they? Did you say? They're good.
Yeah.
My dad is just nearly 80, he's still walking to them, going to on his bus rides and drinking his cappuccinos at Linmore every day. He calls it the office.
Mm. I popped in one time and I was just about to have a cup of tea with him, and but I had something, urgent meeting to go to. But I promised him that I will pop in at some point at some time. Anyway, great to hear your story, your background, and the connection to our Samoan and Tongans and the Pacific community. How has it been since you take over the reins as the deputy prime minister?
Very busy. I've got in recent weeks picked up a couple more portfolios because of what happened with the previous minister.
Hmm.
And so now I have social development, employment, workplace relations, Auckland, arts, culture, and heritage. And then I'm the foreign affairs associate minister with responsibility for the Pacific. So it's really busy because those are a lot of portfolios, all of which I enjoy. But on top of that, as deputy prime minister, what I'm expected to do is obviously stand in when the prime minister can't be there, cover him at events if he can't attend. And also there's an expectation around leadership of our caucus that
Hmm.
I support him with that. He's away again. So he left for NATO last night. So I'm acting prime minister for the next week until he returns on Friday.
Hmm.
So, wanting to make sure that everything is held together as good as possible
Hmm.
whilst he's away so he can concentrate on the important business that he's got at hand over there.
Yes, I know too. With that foreign affairs and foreign policy and war going on in Ukraine and Russia, I know. But what is it like, working alongside him and being with? What's his personality, and how do you see your relationship with him in terms of politics and policies
Sure.
and government?
Well, we've worked together for a long time because we both got in 2008. And so we know each other very well. We don't always agree, which actually is not the worst thing. I actually think that's a good thing if you have different views and are able to bring those views together and form a decision based around all of the angles.
Hmm.
And so I think it's actually a good thing that maybe we have different views on things. He is very calm. He's
Mm.
very solid. Nothing really phases him in terms of some of the difficult things that might come his way.
Yeah.
I think we saw that during COVID in particular when he was taking a leadership role then. I'm probably the more kind of sociable out of the two of us in terms of how I interact with people and my relationships within caucus. But he has the confidence of our caucus, and I think the general public as well, because he's seen as someone who is a very safe pair of hands, and he really is a safe pair
Yeah.
of hands.
That's exactly the angle where I was going to come through, because I've heard of him. I've listened to some of his speeches. He's very confident and he's very solid in his decision making. You know, problems and troubles that came through with Michael Woods and shares and all that stuff. I thought he would fall into the pressure of of the political spectrum, but I see him as very. So, how do you see him coming through as an elected prime minister, and also be counted, accountable, and be dependent, and as somebody that the Pacific community can go with and trust?
Yeah, I think the general public, including our Pacific community, really do want a safe pair of hands right now, particularly given all of the challenging and uncertain things that are happening at the international level. And all of that's, of course, having an impact on us here in
Yeah.
New Zealand. And so, safe pair of hands, they want the calmness. I think that the general public have appreciated his reprioritization,
Yeah.
wanting to focus on what matters to New Zealanders right now. And in particular, his focus on the bread and butter issues, wanting to make sure that we're honing in on things like the cost of living and how we support families at this challenging time. I think that's important for our Pacific community, and I think that's what they'll be looking for.
That was the first part of his speech that I heard when he took over the reins as the prime minister. The cost of living and being able, to cater to domestic issues and problems. And then I want to thank you for your email that I received about, looking at what the Labour is doing, was doing, and will be doing moving forward on this election with families, the importance of our families and children, and the cost of living to be able to afford that.
That's right. And even for some of us, those of us in our Pacific community who may be doing a little bit better than others in our community, it doesn't work unless we take everyone with us. It
Yeah.
doesn't work for us as a community and as a collective if some are doing well or a few are doing well, but everyone else is struggling. It's important that we are looking at the collective impact and how well our community is doing in general, and in particular, those that are on the lowest incomes, what we're doing to address their needs so that they can get by and feed their families and contribute to the ainga, all of those things that we value.
And it's not just New Zealand that is facing the high cost of living. It's all around the world, even in the Pacific Islands as well, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, and everyone. So it's a message of hope, and also be very patient, because there's changes coming through. So it's a matter of being patient, Deputy Prime Minister.
That's right. And I'm glad that you pointed that out to Xavier. I've had the honor of traveling to many of our Pacific countries in recent months with that Associate Foreign Affairs Minister hat. And the cost of living for our Pacific neighbors has also been on the rise. And so they've spoken to me about the pressures for their communities and their countries and what that means. Sometimes we think we're the only ones experiencing this stuff, but I think for anyone that rings home regularly to their family in Samoa, they will be hearing from their family in Samoa that it's very expensive at the moment, and perhaps they are needing a little bit more help. But they will be sharing their reality as well.
Talking about some international issues, and especially between New Zealand and the Pacific, and the relationship with Samoa, how do you see yourself with the relationship with our new Prime Minister, Fiona Samoa-Apito Fiume? What's the working relationship? How do you see her?
Oh, a great deal of respect. for Fiame and the contribution she's made, the journey she's taken. She's a role model for many other Pacific women across the region
Mm,
who are either politicians or aspiring politicians. She also has, personally, I think, a very strong relationship with Aotearoa because of her own connection and schooling and everything else. And so I think the relationship is strong. And you
mm,
can never take any relationship for granted. We just need to continue to work on that.
absolutely. I think I admire you both. Herself as a sister, an older sister. I mean, despite her honorifics and her position as the mother of the nation, and you yourself too, acting prime minister at this point. Really, really proud of you guys, you ladies, and what you're doing for our country and our, as New
Thank
Zealand, as our second home now. Um, in your foreign policy, in terms of helping out, I know you're paying so much million to rebuild the marketplace. What's your take on that in Samoa?
Yeah, good. I mean, we still take the steer from all of our Pacific countries, including Samoa, on where they believe any overseas development funding should be spent. A lot of our focus in recent months has been on climate change initiatives across the region, but also any initiatives that will support with economic development, uh, particularly off the back of COVID and the impacts that COVID have had on the economies of our Pacific countries. But obviously, there are other conversations going on too. Labour mobility and the REC scheme has been one for Samoa,
Yeah.
and a range of other things. It's continual. They're hosting hosting CHOGM next year, which will be a big international forum, and so we just continue to speak with them about how we can support in their hosting of that very important event. There are so many things that are always being discussed between Aotearoa and Samoa, and those are just naming a few.
Yeah, because I think it's Samoa that has a very special relationship with New Zealand as the treaty of friendship that we have between us. And there's one thing that came to my mind a little while ago about looking at the climate refugees. Has that ever surpassed you in terms of how could we help the Pacific community who are finding themselves in difficulties with climate change in the Pacific?
It's certainly going to be something that will be part of an ongoing conversation, I think, Savia. But where we're at currently with our investment and our focus is around risk mitigation for
Yeah.
climate change and what we as a nation and all of our Pacific nations are doing to try and mitigate the risk of further climate change as well as adaptation. How do we support people to be able to stay in their environments but adapt to the situation and the circumstances because of some of the climate change impacts? There are some communities that have moved. We recognize that too, from smaller settlements and islands that have perhaps had to leave smaller islands and move to the larger ones, or people having to move inland because of the coastal impacts due to climate change. And so it's not that relocation hasn't started already in some instances, but in terms of any formal decisions around environmental refugees, I think that that is not there's no decisions that have been taken on that at this
On that,
stage.
right. One of the most important things that I think you've heard, some of the lobby groups have come to parliament and to government, but the issue is about immigration status right now. When it goes back to 2018, 19, during the lockdown period, most of our people that traveled from the Pacific did not, and the uncertainty of the pandemic, they weren't able to extend their visas or working visas or whatever the issue was. How do you see that as something to help out our Pacific community?
So think if we're talking about regularization of those that are here unlawfully, Savia, it is still something that is being discussed and explored and looked at behind the scenes. I think that that is heartening because then our Pacific community can know that it is certainly not off the table. It's just a matter of how it could be done and receiving the policy advice that would be integral to any decisions in
Yeah,
this
yeah,
space.
yeah,
So I have nothing to kind of announce here.
yeah.
I will say though, Savia, as an electorate MP, so as the MP for Kelston, one of the jobs of an electorate MP is to work with people who live within that area,
Yeah.
who may have immigration status issues. And I've had a lot of success with immigration issues for my local community, including Pacific, but not just Pacific, by going through the channels that currently exist. I know that it's not always easy, but I do encourage our people who are in this position to contact their local MP and see if anything is possible, and without fear of coming out of the shadows, to do that, because particularly, I'm not the only one, and I know that a lot of MPs have had really good results, and I could rattle off a number of cases, or without naming the people,
Yeah.
where we've been able to get them legalized. And so there are currently, that is one of the pathways that's in place already, but that other work is continuing.
If we take a look back when Helen Clark went to do her apology and given the apology, and because of the pandemic disease that was brought by Talune at that time, and there was a residual policy in 2000 to 2004, where a 2-year period was given to a person that was selected over that residual policy. And I was thinking that perhaps it might be, to relook into that policy in the future for our people after the 2 years. These are people that are working and paying taxes. They have children who are born here and are attending school. Could that change anything or lead into a conversation in the future?
I think it's at the moment, in terms of how the policy currently exists, it is case by case. And so that doesn't mean that settings can't change in the future. Of course they could. But, if I give an example of where we were able to help a family, and it was a Tongan family, and their kids, 2 of them were born here, and they were actually before 2006, sorry.
Yeah.
So they were New Zealand citizens. 2 were after. This poor couple with their children, it was really a matter of them being given bad advice and paying thousands of dollars to an ineffective immigration advisor that led them to the point that they became unlawful. Now, that was a very easy one to turn around, but it took them having the courage to come forward to their local MP's office for that to occur. That's just one of many examples. And so I still do encourage people to take that pathway and to try that option instead of waiting to see if or when there may be some kind of amnesty or regularization for overstayers.
Yeah. What would you say, and to give some advice to some of these legal advisors and also those who have the license to give out, to do immigration papers, because a lot of them are exploiting our people. Secondly, they're not honest with dealing with our people, and they're very, very expensive. Can you say something to these people right now while they're listening?
I would say it more to our community,
Yeah.
rather than cast aspersions over all those that are working in the immigration space, because I don't think that they're all bad, to be honest, Xavier. But to my community, in our community, I would say if you have a good local MP, they will be able to do exactly what a immigration advisor or lawyer would do for you in these instances. But the difference is you don't have to pay your local MP to do that job and to provide that advocacy, because that is what they are there to do. So, I would encourage people, where possible, to step away from paying lawyers and advisors, and in the first instance, Go to your local MP. I have to say, Xavier, lots of times I get people coming to my office who live in other electorates,
Yeah.
and I have to put them on to the other offices. I just did that the day before yesterday with someone wanting immigration help, but I connected them up with Vanushi's office, Vanushi Walters, because it's an Upper Harbour constituent. So you do have to go to your local MP, but I would do that before paying thousands of dollars to a lawyer or an immigration advisor.
That is fantastic advice. Everybody, I'm going to translate our conversation this afternoon to all our audience listening tonight. To make use and take advantage when you have the chance to go and see your local MP that will be able to help you out and will not burden you with any financial because that's the
Yeah.
key issue here. Now, actually, Prime Minister, there was an issue that really bothered me, and it was in the paper too. A dawn raid was happened somewhere down here in South Auckland, around the Papatoetoe. It was a Tongan family. Is this kind of attitude still existing right now, these days?
Well, that came as a surprise to us that Immigration New Zealand was still practicing out of hours. What do they call it? Operational practices or something like that. And certainly we were disturbed with it. What came of that was that they are now currently reviewing their practice. And in the interim, all out of hours operations of that nature have to be paused. And so they are not currently doing them to the best of our knowledge. And the immigration minister had made it very clear that was what his expectation was. Until we get that report or review of that practice, then it's not happening. And then from when we get that review report, we'll understand what their rationale was for when they might do this or why, because it is important to understand where they do think it's appropriate. But we need to see that report.
Yeah. Okay. At least I brought it to your attention, and
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that you're aware of these kind of behaviors existing again and again over time. But let's talk about the campaign. How are you doing with the campaign? And it's important with our Pacific community to know the significance of the Pacific vote.
Oh, so I mean, well and truly, I think our Pacific community will see all of the political parties getting out there, gearing up for October 14th when the election is going to happen. They probably will be seeing more and more of politicians over the next few months. I was out and about with Auckland MPs last weekend to tell people about the 1st of July changes. And we were at the Avondale market, we were at the Manurewa market, the Otara market, and also the Greyland market. Very interesting talking to people about what they think is of importance leading up to the election on top of everything else. It's cost of living. They want to know that they're going to have a government that will care for them, that will look after them through these challenging times. Our Pacific vote is very important. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of not only getting out to vote ourselves, but making sure that we take the whole family with us. I was talking to an Ifakasa church minister yesterday at a family funeral that I was attending, and he was telling me, even though he's living in Samoa, he always votes in the New Zealand election, and he makes sure that he does that. But we were talking about how his generation are very good at voting, but what we need to do is mobilize to ensure that our younger people are actually going out to vote too. So we were talking about how we make that happen. And I think that's going to be important. How do the whole family move with regards to an election? Not just the elders, but the whole family. And getting our people to the polls will help determine the result we end up with.
That is fantastic to know because it's a way to encourage our people to go and vote. When the Pacific community first came to New Zealand, all these years, they trusted Labour and they went with Labour because we were, not rich. We were, down to earth in terms of what we know, the quality of the work that we do, and also the qualifications that we earn. So we've been very loyal to the Labor Party for a very, very long time, and I think there's a change coming with the younger people, but we need to ground our younger people and generation to know exactly the good that was done by the labor in so many, many years and even up to right now.
Yeah, and I think the other really important value that the Labour Party shares with our Pacific community
Right.
is that we've never just been about individual ambition or achievement or accomplishment. It's always about the collective, the aspirations of the community, making sure that everyone is looked after, especially with our Christian, views in mind and values, those that have the least. And
Hmm.
so, there are some shared values between Labor and our Pacific community that certainly drove me to join and remain loyal to the Labor Party. And I think that for our elders in particular, who have been around to see how political parties operate over time,
Hmm.
they have a very solid, sound understanding of that being one of the things that connects our Pacific community to Labor.
That is, really a really good point to drive down to the minds of our younger people. I'm very close to a lot of the young people and trying to get them to be involved in the labor campaign and also understand, the really great manifestos and things that are discussed for the future. Now, is there an impact in terms of our brother Sir William Seo resigning from Parliament and putting
He will
some
be
more pressure on
missed.
the
He will be missed, Xavier. We have a very close
relationship?
Pacific caucus. All of the Pacific MPs in the Labour Party are not just colleagues, we're like family.
Mm-hmm.
And Alpito thinks he's like a brother to us, but
Yeah,
really he's like an uncle to us.
yeah.
And he's provided really important cultural and spiritual guidance and support to all of us. And so we are going to miss him. But I think he goes knowing that we remain strong as a team,
Yeah.
and that we remain guided by our principles and our values, the same ones that he shared when he's been in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'll still be texting us when he's not even in the job anymore to
Yeah.
try and tell us what we should be doing.
Uh,
So we will miss him. And at this, as he said to me yesterday, this is not a retirement because he
mm,
wants to go and do something else.
mm,
He told me he's just transitioning
yeah.
into whatever the next opportunity might be.
Yeah, I asked him last week, the final interview with him before his function, the farewell function. I said, "Brother, where to from here?" And he said, "Oh, I'll be doing so many other things, consultancy and, visiting Samoa and looking at the land, whether it's time to go back to do the maumanga and the kongakalo." So the amnesty or a residual policy is not off the table, but is still in the pipeline, and that conversation needs to continue. And
Yes.
we need to bring you back to government to hold that conversation with those that are supposed to be around the table. Isn't that right?
Yes, and we continue to be part of those conversations. The new Minister for Immigration, which is Andrew Little,
Hmm.
is continuing to explore this space and is keeping us updated. Don't hesitate too if you Xavier and Radio Samoa want to hear from some of these other ministers
Yes.
with key portfolios, invite them to come and do an interview and to speak directly to that. I'm sure Minister Little would be happy to.
Thank you. All right. Just give us a short, outlook about a policy for the elderly and the disabled, because our population is getting older very, very quickly, and we need to look after our elderly people. Acting Prime Minister.
Yes. Well, I'll start with just talking about superannuation.
Yeah.
This is a very important um, support for our 65-year-olds. One of the things that we announced earlier this year is that we will not be changing the age. Now, National and ACT have been talking about lifting the age of eligibility. If they do that, the groups that will be disadvantaged are Māori and Pacific. The reason for that is we work very hard jobs, a lot of our people. And so when they get to retirement, they really do need to retire when they get to that age. The other reason it would disadvantage them is because of the fact that unfortunately still our Māori and Pacific people die earlier than Pākehā.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we keep that in mind when voting. Are you willing to risk the age for eligibility for superannuation being lifted? Also, the winter energy payment has been an important policy
Yes.
that we implemented.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that really helps our beneficiaries and our seniors over the winter months pay the power bill or buy their firewood. Now, the ACT Party have said previously that it is something they would get rid of, and I'm not sure where National stand on this. But if National are going to implement the tax cuts that they talk about, they're going to have to cut something. And so these are the things that matter to our disabled people and to our seniors. And so I guess it's important to keep in mind what is at stake at this election? What could we lose? And how will that impact on our elders and our disabled people? And I think that's two very good examples of where we shouldn't take the risk.
You know, Auckland as a city continues to grow outwards. The infrastructure and also the roading segments all over the place. It's crowded and it's a traffic jam every day, every day. What is the government prepared to do with this problem now?
So, I mean, there continues to be the investment in the roads that needs to occur, but also, where possible, we need to be encouraging more people to actually use public transport. If more people use public transport, then we take more cars off the road, which helps us address the congestion issue. So what everyone would have seen at the most recent budget, and this came into effect on the 1st of July, is that now kids under the age of 13 will have free public transport. Those between the age of 13 and 24 will get half price public transport.
Right. I saw
Those that have a community service card, they will permanently have half price public transport as well. And of course, our gold card holders during off-peak times get free public transport. Now, trying to actually incentivize people to catch public transport will help us get some people off the road to hopefully address the congestion issues that we're faced with. There still needs to be improvements to our public transport system, but those are things that are ongoing as well.
But why don't you bring back? Remember when we were young, we used to have carless days, and catch a ride with somebody, close to you. It's not only saving the traffic space and traffic jam, but also saving petrol, because petrol is keep on rising in fuel prices.
That's right, Xavier. And so, I do notice even with my own son's school, so many of the kids, they almost all get dropped off by the parents in the morning. Now, when you've got a school of 800 kids, that's a lot of cars moving around. We all know that during a school week, that's when the traffic is the worst in the morning and in the afternoons too. And so I don't know, what the answer is there. I know that, we try and make our son walk to school, but with the broken leg, that we had to change that a little bit. But as soon as that leg is fixed, he's going to be walking to school again.
Acting Prime Minister, what a great time to catch up with you, and also leading up to the general election and encouraging our people to get out there, not just you and the wife, and take the whole family, your church, and giving support. Now, what are some of the most, prominent case scenarios in terms of would Labour be able to lead on its own, or would be able to have a coalition with somebody? Who can you work together with?
Yeah, certainly not National or ACT. So I think that from the sounds of things, Nationals already resigned themselves to the
Hmm.
fact that there will be a National Act government.
Mm.
In fact, the leader, Christopher Luxon, has been talking about them as a potential National Act government. And we continue to go into this election campaign with, of course, the aspiration and goal that we will get as many votes as we possibly can as a political party. And then it is after the election, if we need to, then we look at who we might have to have a coalition with, or a confidence and supply agreement. But we don't go into an election planning to have a coalition.
Yeah.
Those are the conversations that occur afterwards. And as far as I'm concerned, because I'm forever the optimist, we could still govern by ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
go hard
It's
trying to
better
make
that
that
way.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, to dish out over here, dish out there, and then not knowing exactly what, because it's a coalition anyway. But so Uncle Winston Peters is way out of the picture now?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that Winston might have ruled out any coalition. However, never say never. And
Yeah.
I guess that's if we've learned anything over the course of time with politics,
Yeah.
it's let's just wait and see.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
then. Any frictions with the Maori Party? And since that event with the one that resigned and joined the Maori Party?
No, I mean, the interesting thing is that actually off camera,
Mm.
when we're not in the debating chamber
Yeah.
and the public aren't looking at us, generally everyone gets along. Most people, anyway. Most people get along relatively well. We're still going to go hard with our attempt to win all of the Māori seats.
Yeah.
We've got a really good new candidate for the Ikaroa Rāwhiti seat, which is the one where Mika Whaitiri was the Labour MP.
MP. Yep.
Yeah, and so the new candidate, Kushla, is very impressive. And so our goal is to try and win them all. And so we'll go in there 100% on that.
All right. Well, because of our time, um, Acting Prime Minister, thank you very much. Is there anything else that I have missed or that you wanted
No,
to
just Xavier, I
elaborate on?
think we've tried to make this interview work a few times and then we've had technical difficulties and everything else. So just whaftai lava for allowing me to do this interview today. I look forward to speaking with you more often.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that our Samoan community will have questions for us leading into the election, and we're happy to answer those questions.
And finally,
Yeah.
congratulations for having your malu done this week. I heard about it, and I was hoping that I would know where to go and come and render support for your malu. Thank you, for that. That is, it goes well with the motto of the Samoan Language Week. This is bringing our culture to other lands, and we're proud people, Pacific, Samoan, Tongans, and everything as one family. And I congratulate you for having your malu on, and it's not easy, and that's carrying your family, your heritage, your genealogy, all on yourself around the world and be proud of. So congratulations once again, and thank you so much for giving me the time to interview your honourable acting prime minister.
Mawhawhake lava, Xavier.
Whaftai. Whamanuia le tua, i lau whionga fua le langi, ia po lau whionga fua i sam la olu, lo whantu le pali i ma le whatua, ma le ainga atoa. Manuia fua i le alo atu le whainga palota. If you need help, I'm here, and you can just ding ding. There we go. Ia soi fua ia ma ia manuia.